Welcome to another edition of Hames Hot Mic. I'm your host, Clint Hames. Today's guest is Councillor Linda Annis from the City of Surrey. So after this quick break, we're going to be back with this very energetic and involved member of Surrey City Council. My guest today is Linda Annis. Like so many of the guests that I have on the program, it will take me almost as long to introduce Linda as it will to conduct the interview, because folks involved in local government as councillor, Linda Annis is, seem to be involved in lots of other things. As well as being a councillor with the City of Surrey, Linda's the executive director of the Metro Vancouver Crime Stoppers and has held several senior marketing and communications roles in the corporate and nonprofit sector. She's actively involved in a number of different groups, including the Osteoporosis Society of Canada, which she chairs, Semiahmoo House Society, which is an organization I'm quite familiar with, and the Surrey Care Community Foundation. For the City of Surrey, she's involved as a member of the Finance Committee, the Community Services Committee, the Heritage Advisory Committee, the Safe Program Leadership Group, which I hope we'll get a chance to talk about. She also represents the City of Surrey on the Metro Vancouver Board and sits on the Indigenous Relations Committee and the Housing Committee. So we're going to meet one of the busiest people in the City of Surrey. Welcome, Linda. Thanks so much for agreeing to be on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me today.
You know, I always like to ask folks that are involved in local government what inspires them to get involved, and certainly in your case, what inspired you to jump in with both feet into one of the largest and most complex municipal jurisdictions in British Columbia, if not the country?
Well, I've always felt that it's very, very important to serve the community. I've always wanted to do that, both in my work in the world and not-for-profit. And this opportunity came to me just by chance. I really had no interest in running in civic politics, albeit I had helped in the background for many years in different levels of government. But when the offer came to me, I thought, what an opportunity. How many people get the opportunity to run for public office in a city like Surrey that's growing and thriving and soon will be the biggest city in the Fraser Valley, and even within the next few years bigger than Vancouver. So I jumped at it and don't regret it for a moment.
So when you say you jumped at it, folks that watch the show would know, I'm sure, that Surrey elections look a lot like Vancouver elections. They're municipal organizations that put forward a slate of candidates, and they try to get their entire slate elected. In your case, you were the only one successful, I believe, from your particular electors group. Did you get approached by that electors group to run for their party, as it were?
Yes, what happened was just before the writ was actually dropped, one of the candidates that was on the Surrey First slate decided to switch to a different slate. So there was an opening there, and they were looking for somebody that had a public safety background, preferably, and they like to have a balanced slate so they have equal number of females and males. And me being female and having a public safety background fit the bill. So I was approached and decided to go for it. And as I was saying earlier, don't regret it for a moment. But nobody was more surprised than myself to see only me get elected.
Yeah, it was an interesting election. It seemed to revolve around, from looking at it from this end of the valley, it seemed to revolve around one of the big issues was whether or not to continue with the RCMP as the municipal police force, or to look at the development of a Made in Surrey municipal police force. That seemed to be the key issue, certainly on the current mayor's mind. Would that be an accurate reflection of the major issue in the election?
There was a couple of things that happened. Surrey First, which is the party that I belong to, had been in government for a lot of years, firstly with Diane Watts and then later with Linda Hepner. When we came into this election, there was two mayoralty candidates ostensibly that were Surrey First colleagues, and they decided to run against each other, and that quite frankly split the vote, and Mayor McCallum came up the middle. Was the policing issue part of the decision? Possibly. Was SkyTrain versus LRT part of the, or were people just looking for a change in government? Quite frankly, I think we as Surrey First, we did ourselves a disservice and we split the vote.
Yeah, that can happen. It's one of the downsides, I think, of that kind of approach to municipal government, is that it's sort of all or nothing. You belong to one of those groups, and if they split, then that vote gets split as well. Now, I'm trying to remember the name of the group that Doug McCallum represented. I know there's Surrey First, and then there's another name for their particular group. Do they hold a majority now on council? Is it a large group, or was there a number of smaller groups and then a majority of Mayor McCallum's team?
Well, on election night, the mayor took it all with the exception of the one seat, and that being my seat on council. So when we went into our early meetings, there was 8 of them, 7 councillors from the Safe Surrey Coalition, and then the mayor. Things started to fall apart, unfortunately, for the mayor. Early on, Stephen Pettigrew, who was one of his councillors, he left to become an independent, and then followed by Brenda Locke and Jack Hundile. So presently on council, it's a 5-4 council, 5 being from the Safe Surrey Coalition, which is the mayor's party, and then 4 that are sitting independently.
It's interesting. Now, the SkyTrain LRT issue. Why don't you talk a little bit about what that is? Us folks out here that are still using horse and wagon, mass rapid transit is not something that's in our lexicon yet, but we certainly hear a lot about that debate. Talk to us about what that rapid transit debate looks like in Surrey.
Well, what we decided originally under the previous council, the choice was to go with LRT, which is a light rapid transit. Many, many cities throughout North America and Europe use it. It's like a very, very fast train that moves people at street level, and it's designed to move people within the city from community to community. Surrey is made up of many town centers, and the idea with LRT was to connect these town centers with each other to increase employment and increase livability in Surrey. It wasn't designed to move people outside of Surrey. Now, when we look at the SkyTrain, which will be running east-west, and it just unfortunately we have budget only for 4 stops. It's largely designed to move people out of Surrey into other metropolitan areas. For me, that's all part of the transit system that we need to be moving forward with, to be able to move people from the valley up into other parts of the lower mainland. But it's also even more important that we keep people in Surrey, because we need to create more employment here so that we can build a city where people can live, work, and play.
Well, certainly growth is an issue that's now facing every one of the valley communities, Surrey probably as much as anyone. I think, as you mentioned, you're poised to become the largest municipality in British Columbia in a very short period of time, surpassing Vancouver. Certainly when people out here think about Vancouver, they think about New Westminster and Burnaby and all of those communities as being Vancouver, and they see a large metropolitan area. But in fact, the city of Vancouver is only slightly larger than the city of Surrey at this point in time. So I'm assuming that Surrey, with its growth rate, will eclipse fairly soon. What are the issues besides transit within the Surrey region? I certainly understand what you're saying about moving people within Surrey and keeping that community contained and certainly sustainable. You don't want to be Vancouver's bedroom. That certainly doesn't create a healthy economy there. We certainly face that issue, as does Abbotsford, all the valley communities. We'd rather keep people in our communities and have them live and work here. So one of the proposals that keeps rearing its head out this way is the idea of the activation of the old interurban line, which is the old rail line that ran from Chilliwack in through to New Westminster in the olden days at about 25 miles an hour. So it would take you most of the day to get there, and certainly the rest of the day to get home if you used it. There's a lot of talk about the activation of that line Certainly, we hear that talk a lot. Is there a position that the City of Surrey has taken about that? Are they interested in that kind of an approach to sort of interregional transit?
We really need to be looking for innovative ways to move people throughout the Fraser Valley and throughout the Lower Mainland. When you get into the valley, as we all know, transportation is very, very difficult at best. I know even within Surrey, to get buses on certain routes is very problematic. We need to be looking at every possible strategy around transportation so that we can move people more quickly throughout the valley. We know what happens when there's an accident on Highway 1. It's problematic, and to get people to be able to move just comes to a standstill. So we need to be looking at options like you've suggested and like many other ones as well.
So let's shift gears now and let's talk about the policing issue in the city of Surrey. What precipitated the notion that somehow the RCMP weren't as good a solution to policing needs in Surrey as a municipal police force? How did that discussion start? Why did that come forward?
Well, I can't speak for the mayor. That was his notion, and that was what he ran on. One thing I did run on was to look at what the policing model in Surrey looks like, and quite clearly we do not have enough police officers in Surrey. The RCMP has had some very, very innovative programs in Surrey that are unique, not only within the RCMP world, but within all policing jurisdictions. I do think we needed to look at the model. We don't have enough police officers in Surrey. And just to give you an example, currently under the RCMP, we have roughly 845 police officers. Vancouver has 1,450. Yet our population base is over 85% of Vancouver. Plus, geographically, we are as big as Burnaby, Richmond, and Vancouver combined. So when you look at those two factors and think of the complexity of policing in Surrey, because of the geographic size, because of the size and breadth of our population, we need to be looking at innovative ways, not switching the badge.
So what is the thinking? Clearly, I'm sensing from you that you're not so much in favor of that. What is being proposed as the positive reasons why Surrey should have its own police force? Is there a way then to have more police officers? Is it more cost effective? Are people believing that it will provide more effective policing in the community?
Well, just to point out, I guess, what's happening in Surrey, there's been more than 50,000 people that have signed a petition that they do not want us to transition to a Surrey police force. That in itself speaks volumes for what the climate is like in Surrey, or the willingness for this change. It's not a popular subject. Under the current model, we're going to actually end up with less police officers. We'll have around 803 police officers when the Surrey Police Service is fully staffed. They lack some of the innovative programs that the RCMP have. We will give up the 10% that we get from the federal government each year to partially fund our policing budget. The cost of transition alone is going to be hundreds of millions of dollars. And once it's fully operational, as I was mentioning, we will be giving up our 10% rebate. We'll be paying higher salaries for police officers because it's a different union. The city is responsible for indemnification for any insurance claims. Ottawa doesn't pick that up. Our IT system, we're having to change systems that will cost us around $40 to $50 million. It's just not a good, in my mind, a good financial decision without the will of the people wanting this.
So on that basis, and I certainly understand all those arguments, as a former mayor of a community in the Fraser Valley, it's always been one of those things that came up, that people said, gee, we should have our own police, thinking there maybe was a way to be more in charge of what they do, or have more municipal input into that. In your mind, obviously, you have some deep concerns. In your mind, what was the positive that people saw that allowed them to, in fact, elect a city government on that issue, is saying, they're called the Safe City Coalition. Obviously, that played a role in it. What's the positive that they're putting forward in terms of making this change?
Well, they're saying that we will have more control over the police. That, in fact, is not the case. We know that many cities that have the RCMP have a public safety committee. Some of them have a police board. That's completely doable. Never once have I ever heard something that the mayor has wanted or a council member that would help improve policing in Surrey be denied from the RCMP. They do a tremendous job in our community. I think there's oftentimes the notion that as you become a large city like Surrey or Vancouver, that you should have your own police force. It's a little bit that's what big cities do. But in fact, I don't think that's the case. The RCMP have been serving Surrey very, very well for many, many years, many decades, and have come up with some very innovative programs. One in particular about helping us deal with our homeless situation. They, in collaboration with many social services, have done an incredible job, and they need to be commended for that. Our programs around our Car 67, which is where you take a police officer and you put them with a mental health worker, absolutely brilliant, and we should be giving them more funding to be able to do those kinds of programs.
Let's talk about the homeless issue and the Car 67, which is an incredible program. It's very innovative. I know that in Chilliwack, where I live, it's something that's being explored. It's not that anybody is saying it's not a good idea. There just doesn't seem to be the resources available yet to implement that kind of a program here. Homelessness is an epidemic that seems to be crossing this region and other parts of British Columbia, and it's a real challenge. Obviously it's affecting all communities. What's happening in Surrey that you can point to and say that's really helping, and how grave is the problem there at this point in time?
We've had some really very innovative programs around helping people that have found themselves homeless. Is there more work to do? You bet. One of the programs that I'm very, very proud of, and it actually came from our previous council, where they had several community organizations working together, including the police, to move homeless folks. And it took, several months to actually accomplish it, but to move them into transitional housing. And we had three locations where we did this, to allow people to get stabilized, to allow people to get things that we all take for granted, like getting a social insurance number so you can apply for welfare, getting, some clothes so that you could start to think about what it might be going back to work, getting some mental health help, making sure that you've got food in your belly and a dry place to sleep. We all need those things before we can move out of homelessness. And I would say that the city of Surrey has done a tremendous job in terms of dealing with that. Is the job done? Absolutely not. We need to continue doing this, but it's something that I'm very proud of, the work that we've done in Surrey. We have much more work to do here in terms of building more transitional housing where people can go and live in, for a longer period of time and get back into the community. And we need to focus that throughout Surrey because we are so big, and we know that people that are homeless need to find a place to live where they live, where they were living, and not to move them to other parts of the jurisdiction. So we've got to do some work on that. And we also have to do work on people that are still homeless. How can we get them into shelters? How can we get them, a warm meal and a place to get a shower and to be able to go when it's cold out or too hot out, just to get some respite from the climate.
It sounds like we're all working towards the same things up and down the valley. One of my guests recently was Mayor Henry Braun from Abbotsford, and I've talked to the new mayor in Mission, and it sounds like we're all on the same page about what's necessary, and it sounds like also there's some great work going on in Surrey in that regard. We're going to take just a quick break, and we'll be back with my guest, Councillor Linda Annis from the City of Surrey, after these messages. Welcome back, everyone. This is Clint Hames with my show Hames Hot Mic. My guest is Linda Annis, a councillor with the City of Surrey. And Linda, we've been talking most recently about homelessness and the impacts on a community that homelessness has. Now, in the Fraser Valley, I'm aware, this end of the valley, we do an annual homeless count. Is that something that's being done in the City of Surrey? What's the magnitude of the issue that you're dealing with there?
Well, always one too many persons that doesn't have a home is one too many. But in our recent homeless count, we did a count of just roughly 650 people were deemed to be homeless. The count, I don't think, though, accurately reflected what's happening in Surrey. We have many rural areas where people are setting up tents in forested areas or in secluded areas, and unfortunately, many of those people got mixed. If I was to guess what I thought our homeless situation was, it's at least 2 or 2.5 times the number that we actually counted on that particular day.
Yeah, I think that we tend to underrepresent that number. People do the best they can, but like Surrey, Chilliwack has the same issues with lots of forested areas and homeless camps that are hard to access. So the problem is bigger than probably we even know. One of the other things, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to add also that, there are many, many youth that are homeless, and unfortunately, many of those youth are surfing on someone's couch or living in a car or that kind of thing, and those people unfortunately weren't counted.
Yeah, and I think there's a tendency for people not to want to be counted as homeless. So people aren't lining up to admit they're homeless. So there are people that will make sure that they're not included in that, however they could benefit from the services. I'm going to shift gears yet again because we have a half an hour with you, and I want to touch another issue that I'm sure people are interested in and certainly concerned about in our community, in all the Valley communities, and that's the gang problems that we seem to have a resurgence of. We're seeing shootings happening on a fairly regular basis. The folks I know in the RCMP and police services are saying we've got a real gang war going on. We know how that seemed to end the last time in a huge tragedy that took place in your community. What's happening in Surrey, and what are the things that concern you, and what are the things that the city is doing in cooperation and partnership with police services there to try to get this under control?
The gang problem is a huge problem, not only in Surrey, but throughout the Lower Mainland. And we know it's only going to get worse before it gets better. It's absolutely tragic because every time a young person is killed, it's somebody's son or somebody's daughter, and it's one too many. And it's very unfortunate because kids are getting lured as young as 10 years old to get into the gang lifestyle. It starts off very small. They don't realize what they're getting into, but once they know something, the gang that they have just joined, that they maybe didn't realize that they were joining, has got them. It's absolutely tragic. And I really think what we need to be doing is working with kids as young as 10 years old to be able to, and their families, of course, so that they realize what the dangers are of entering into gang life, and to be working with parents so parents know what the signs are so that they can provide the intervention or get the resources that are required to get the help. And I'm super, super proud of what Surrey has done in collaboration with the federal government. About 2.5 years ago, the federal government gave Surrey some funding, $7.5 million to be precise, to develop the Safe Hub. And this is a resource where we identify kids and families that could be at risk, and we provide them with the necessary help. There's 10 different agencies in Surrey that work very collaboratively together, and the city facilitates it, and we've had wildly successful programs and outcomes as a result of this. The other piece that I'm very, very proud of, there's a website now that Surrey has just launched. It's called empowersurrey.ca. And I would suggest to any families, not just those that are living in Surrey, but to have a look at this website. It identifies what the risk factors are of kids that could be entering into that lifestyle, and it helps parents know what to do if they think their child is. I mean, what parent, they suddenly think, oh my God, my child is entering into a gang lifestyle. Who knows what to do? not many, and this website provides you with the resources to be able to identify that what you're thinking is correct and how to go about getting help.
We'll make sure that we put that website up on the screen for the interview because it sounds great. Tell me more about this Safe Hub, you called it. What is the nature? How does that program work?
So how that works is there's a couple of aspects to it, but the key aspect is that if a child has some sort of an interaction or identifies signs that they may be entering into a gang lifestyle or into a criminal lifestyle, it might be things like, having a lot of truancy from school, interaction with the police, social behavior issues, problems at home, and there's many, many more. But just to give you an example, if these behaviors are identified by any of the agencies, and the agencies that sit at the table are Ministry of Children and Family Services, the RCMP, Surrey Schools, many not-for-profits, they develop a wraparound program for this child and their family so that, maybe if the child is not feeling like they belong to an organization, might be getting them involved in sports, getting them psychological counseling, helping the parents develop parenting skills, whatever it is, but they will develop a customized program for that particular family and for that particular youth.
And that's called Safe Hub. And does it have a website or a way that folks can contact that?
It absolutely does. The fastest and easiest way to do it is to go to the Surrey website, which is www.surrey.ca, and just type in SAFE, and you will will take you immediately to the landing page.
That's great. I hope that folks who are watching, or in fact other local governments that might be watching, will look at that and take a real interest, because I think one of the most fundamental ways we all move forward is by looking at what's going on in other communities and making sure that we're taking the best ideas from everywhere. Now, just to finish up today, on your resume, you talk about being a member of the board of Semiahmoo House Society, which is an organization near and dear to my heart because they work with folks with developmental disabilities. And you were talking just before we went on air about a new program, and I just wanted to give you a couple of minutes to talk about that program that you seem awfully proud of, justifiably so.
Well, I'm hugely proud of all of the work that Semiahmoo House does. And a few years ago, they developed an independent living program for people that have disabilities. And the people are integrated into a beautiful apartment building. Who wouldn't want to live there if you saw it? It's absolutely incredible. But it's integrated with other members of the community, with seniors, with just regular folks, and it's just really an amazing program. People that before thought that they couldn't live independently absolutely can, and they do at Chorus. It's an incredible property.
And it's a property that the Semiahmoo House developed, and I think in the old days we used to call that reverse integration. So the organization would create the facility and then bring folks from all over the community to live in there alongside of folks with disabilities. So it sounds like it's a wonderful project, and look forward to hearing further reports about it. So what's happening? What's in Linda Annis's future? Are we going to see, I think, the next municipal elections 2022? Have you made up your mind you're running again?
I absolutely am running. I've said to anyone that will listen to me, if I knew 10 years ago how much I would enjoy this, I would have done it 10 years ago. It's an absolutely thrill to be able to serve my city, particularly at this time, but what an opportunity. I think more people should get into politics.
So as the only sitting member of your party, will you be considering running for mayor?
You have to always consider it, right? I mean, who wouldn't want to be mayor of Surrey, particularly how it's evolving right now, growing to soon be the biggest city in British Columbia. I'm considering all the options, but certainly haven't discounted that.
And is Surrey First an active coalition of folks still in the community?
We have lots of folks that are supporting Surrey First. It's a great legacy. Diane Watts did such an incredible job of forming it and keeping government, and of course followed by Linda Hepner. There's a real legacy, and when I look at some of the things that they did in Surrey, in terms of building downtown Surrey, and if people haven't visited downtown Surrey, they should come. It's amazing what's going on there. And the 300 parks that we have in Surrey, incredible, and all the recreation centers that Safe Surrey, or Surrey First built, I should say. It's amazing where Surrey has come, and we've got lots more ways to go, but it's a growing and vibrant community, which I'm very proud of.
I was involved in local government at the same time that Diane was the mayor of Surrey, and certainly she provided, I think, very strong leadership for that community, and the growth that was a result of her being the mayor was certainly growth that was very positive for the city. Linda, we could probably go on because I have a passion for a couple of things that we both seem to have passion about. I could probably go on for a long time talking about local government and who knows, even provincial government. But we've run out of time, and I want to just thank you so much for spending some time with me. Linda Annis, of course, councillor with the City of Surrey. It's great for the viewers of this show to get a sense of what's happening all across the valley and see how much we share in terms of issues from one community to the next. And you certainly provided us with that information today. As always, to the viewers of this show, I hope you'll continue to tune in. And thank you very much for watching another episode of Hames Hot Mic.